So what we have here is a Futon Company Twingle sofa, the oak version. I'll just lift the camera away so that you can see the whole thing, or more of the thing. We have two rails and then a bunch of slats that go between the two rails. People often struggle to get the two rails together with the slats in the right slots. This is because the slats keep dropping out as you try to bring the two rails together. So I'm going to show you how you deal with that. I also want to show you a quality control problem or two with this sofa, and show you how I'm going to try and fix it. So the quality control problem is to do with this. This is a threaded rod, 6mm threaded rod, that sits in a threaded, I forget the name for those things, but it's being bedded into the oak. And the way this works is that as you bring this rail into the other rail, or parallel with the other rail and tight, you can tension it by, and thus hold the two rails together, clamp them together, using this oak with a fitting here. Don't know if you can see that well, but and when that's tight up, that will clamp this to this rail, and the other end of it will be clamped to the other rail. And they supply a spanner to fix this with. So there's a dowel fitting and a threaded rod fitting. Now, the problem is that on this sofa, there's there's no copy at the other end of the locking nut that this should go into, and so we can't get a tight clamping against that. If I were anywhere near a futon shop, I'd just take the rail back and say, hey guys, got a fault here, and another fault on these, which I'll show you in a minute. But I actually unpacked this 1,000 miles away from the nearest futon shop in Portugal, or Futon Company shop, and so my very helpful next door neighbour came up with a way that we could possibly fix it. And his way is to use one of these. And what he's saying, this is a clamping bolt, expansion bolt. His suggestion is that we take this piece, fit it in the bottom there, and then as we tighten down on that threaded rod, we will eventually produce a friction grip, which I can demonstrate. Yeah, it's already beginning to stick. It'll hold that really tight. His suggestion was that I sit it in here, tap this expansion collar to lock it down as far into the hole as possible, and then put the bolt in. And I think that's a really good idea. It's worth trying anyway. One thing I have noticed though is that if you sit the piece of wood that's going to be clamped there, what we see is that that expansion collar actually comes up into this hole here, and I think it needs to be shorter so that it doesn't come into the hole. Otherwise it will simply pass through, or could pass through, this locking collar, I don't know, shim that sits in there, because that actually can go all the way around that expansion collar. So I think what we really want to do is to cut this about where my thumbnail is, and drill out this hole a little bit, and for about maybe 2 centimetres, 20 mil, so that this can only go so far up before it locks against the shoulder of where the original drill hole is. And that will force this to stay down and force the locking action caused by the expansion of this collar to be much further down in that hole. So I've been thinking about how to do that, and thinking the best way is probably to saw off the top part of this expansion hole and drill that out. There's a couple of sort of ins and outs about it. So I think my neighbour's absolutely right that this all needs to be put into there without the threaded rod in, and then tapped with a hammer to lock it in. It locks quite well already, but that tapping action will get rid of a lot of our problem. It's a shame, it's so close. And speculating about it, one could almost guess that it won't move. It won't begin to pull out as we tighten the thread, the nut down on it. But I suspect it will. So I'm going to go and do that drilling and that work, and then I'm going to report back to you and show you how it's going. Okay, I've shortened this off. I've cut off about 6 to 7 mil, I would say, and we can now see that it's running about 5 mil short of the bottom of the hole, and I think we can make that even shorter before we drill this out by tapping this down. Per my neighbour's suggestion, this is the bit that's I find most scary, because it's effectively irreversible. So brilliant, let's do it. And that is in. I've got a suspicion it's at a bit of an angle, but I can move it just a bit, and I can see that we're in a that it's already really well locked. So I think he's right about that. I think that's worked. Looking at the metal thread, I would say that that's gripped fine, and it's probably about a little beyond halfway up the hole, and also we've got enough room to get this nut on. So what I now need to do is drill this hole out a bit so that it can receive this, and then I think we're going to be good to go. It's going to be some fiddling about how we get it all together, but we'll see what we can do. Here's the drill bit that I think fits this. It's an 8mm drill bit, and I just need to work out how deep to make that shoulder, and then pop some sellotape on the drill bit or something to mark how deep we're going. So where are we? We're about there. Let's see what we've got.